Pandaria, her hills of gold, in dark and mournful times of old, did once a hopeless horror hold. When from her sacred veil did spring, with storm and flash, a monstrous thing, his name, Lei Shen, the Thunder King.
Piece of news so big, Blizzard even managed to turn my camera on. Yes, that's how important this is. So, the mysterious 10.2.7's time-running Pandemonium event has been revealed. Apparently it is the WoW Remix Mists of Pandaria event. Similar to the standalone event of something like Plunderstorm, this time we get an entire expansion worth of special content. So, to help every one of you, especially the lazy ones who don't want to go and sift through 30 plus Wowhead pages trying to milk the ads for all their worth, or maybe just not wanting to go through several Discord or Twitter or Reddit threads, what we are doing is just collecting the entirety of the news in a single video and trying to go as fast as possible through them. The gist of the event, as mentioned, is that you get to create a fresh new character and just load it up in the Mists continent and play as if Mists of Pandaria content was the only one available from level 10 when you will start the event all the way up to max level. Now, there are of course plenty of rewards to entice players to play that are not the same as back then. Otherwise, many players would just find it kind of dull. You have pretty much the vast majority of the rewards from Mists of Pandaria getting recolored. So you won't just be getting a simple copy of what you already got in Mists of Pandaria, it's actually going to be something extra. Worth adding, of course, that by the time this event ends, your character will simply be transferred to retail, keeping all of its, achievements and rewards that you gained from this WoW Pandaria Remix event. That's still relevant if you are a retail player only, for example. Now, worth pointing that the PTR of this event is scheduled to start tomorrow for basically this weekend. You have to test 10.2.7 on the PTR if you are so interested. Blizzard is trying to make sure that you are going to feel a different experience when getting into this new expansion by pointing out, for example, that when you get to play this event, you are going to have new customizable items, with each item slot having their new identity with spell gem sockets. These are just a few examples of the gem sockets that will be available in this event of Mists of Pandaria, for example, which is of course vastly different from what we have right now. There's also going to be a rerun of the, let's say, legendary cloak from Mists of Pandaria, because the Cloak of Infinite Potential is going to be a cloak, funnily enough, with finite potential, because you will be collecting threads, basically this currency for your activities in game, to get the cloak progressively stronger and stronger. And in case you're getting worried about, but what about our dear and beloved cloak effects from Mists of Pandaria's legendary cloaks? Those are also coming back in the form of toys, just so you can then plant those effects on your special cloak of this event. It's gonna be interesting to see if those toys will also carry over to retail, giving you an 8-hour long effect for your specific effect, since we already have a toy that does this, but this one is an 8-hour long cloak effect that will be available in WoW Remix. Even more so, even more OP gems, like giving brand new abilities even to your specs or classes, or significantly changing some of the abilities you have. So it's not just a flat out copy of Mists of Pandaria, you do actually have a bunch more things different than what you used to when you played Mists of Pandaria. Blizzard is also adding meta achievements for the entirety of the event, so these are going to be the ones available from completing a collection of other achievements. You have, of course, the big money ticket reward of the Elegon recolored mount. This one is actually, surprisingly, amongst the chillest to get in terms of achievements, one being to complete just a handful of dungeons and the LFR version of the first raid of Mists of Pandaria. Golden Lotus is just farming some rep, August Celestials is more rep farm, and Elusive Falls is just getting 3 rares in the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. So all things considered, it's a pretty easy set of achievements to get this recolored dragon mount. And most of the other achievement requirements are not very deep in terms of challenge required for the event. The other one, the cooler one perhaps for the zone itself, the Time Runner beacon, getting you a triple socket trinket on top of the basically Demon Hunter debuff given to you for free on a trinket, requires you to go and play a whole bunch of scenarios, together with the final one being to do Siege of Orgrimmar in Elefardo. So you have already the clear indication that the requirements of the achievements are not some mythic, or I guess in Mists of Pandaria it would have been heroic level difficulty of content. They are quite lax, as this event is supposed to be. Now, there was also a voice in the corridors, possible data mining about Realm First even becoming available, like Realm First to get to level 70 for example, or even raid related Realm Firsts. No, those were bugs at the very least for now. There is no plan to get any Realm Firsts about this event. However, that's about everything that we know, besides the announcement and the first part of the data mining, because as mentioned, it will launch on the PTR tomorrow, so you will get more news by then. For now, we just know there are going to be some, wacky, for fun, possibly overpowered set of gems you will put on your gear. There's going to be the meta gem, like back in the days, which will be stronger than the other gems and even go as far as not just giving you effects for your character, but also even brand new skills, brand new abilities to use, and the fact that most of everything will be accelerated, will be faster to go through, this one being a much more limited event than an entire expansion. If you think about it, you have to cram leveling and then getting gear from Mogushan Vaults into Heart of Fear, into Terrors of the Endless Spring, into Throne of Thunder, into Siege of Orgrimmar in like 4 months. So, it has to be quite accelerated. There are, of course, though, still plenty of rewards. We're talking about 30 plus mounts, a whole bunch of transmog appearances, of course, coming from the event with different sets of recolors, etc, etc. Some players have been understandably bummed that they were expecting something shiny for retail, and instead it's a standalone side event. Now, one of the more vocal devs, Holy Longdale, has pointed out, perhaps mistakenly because it's just gonna get the hopes of the players up, has pointed out that this is not all 10.2.7 has to offer when it comes to retail. When it comes to Dragonflight, we have probably a few more things coming that will just be for retail itself, rather than for this specific event. Now, as for the thing in retail we already know about, well, there is a couple of things. Heritage armors are being added for trolls. A reasonable look, rather troll-ish, possibly a bit weird on the bandana, on the scarf in front of the face, which looks kind of weird with the model, but besides that it's kind of okay, nothing too great. And then you have the heritage armor coming for the Draenei. This one has surprised me more because I've seen more players complaining about this, pointing out that it looks like a ragtag collection of items, maybe some TBC questing greens or something along the lines. I thought it was quite thematic, since pretty much is an almost copy of one of the original models we saw of an evolved Draenei, of a non-broken Draenei, and it looks pretty loyal to that iteration of a Draenei, so I think for a heritage armor it's pretty fitting for the race. As for the other changes to the actual, retail part of 10.2.7, you do have some QOL additions. One that will help hunters in particular is the pet stable being updated. Now you have more information about the pets. You have pets that can be favored and added to a separate group on the top of the stable list. You can now rename pets without having to go and grab some items. You can now release pets directly from the stable without having to summon them first and then release them. Now, this one is actually good for Beast Mastery players. Now, the pet that is summoned by the Animal Companion is now going to have a dedicated slot next to the active pet list. Now, as a BM hunter, you can pretty much hand pick which pet gets summoned by Animal Companion. The other one of the interesting changes is, one of the things that happens far too rarely, right? Which is, I wish Blizzard just took this add-on and just implemented into their UI to making their UI more modern, right? What they are doing now is pretty much trying to add a looking for group filter, a native in-game filter for your looking for group tool. You can now sort by specific dungeons. You can now sort by role available. You can sort by whether or not there is already your class present in that group, if the group already has a tank or a healer present, as well as the minimum mythic plus rating of the leader. And finally, for the raid, you can now filter by difficulty, normal, heroic, and mythic as well. It is still likely it will be worse than actual add-ons for filtering, but at least now you have plenty more options, even in the default version of the game, for you to filter and try to find the groups you want whenever you go through the looking for group tool. But for now, this is all we have available in terms of the collection of news about 10.2.7. After all, don't forget, we're sort of jumping ahead here, because we're talking about 10.2.7 when 10.2.6 isn't even out. One could argue, well, there is nothing really to data mine about 10.2.6 because there is nothing in 10.2.6, so what are we even talking about? But of course, even though we are getting showered with news right now, and likely so in 1 and 2 days once the patch actually lands on the PTR, so we will be able to see just how fast is the leveling, how difficult are the dungeons, how difficult are the raids, perhaps also how brokenly overpowered are all of these gems once assembled together, etc, etc. Just remember that the patch itself is still a month and a half minimum away from actually being released. There is still plenty of time for more changes coming to the patch itself. It is still, though, pretty good to know that we have even more content, although it might bum some players out about not being fully Dragonflight related, that we have it in this lull period before the release on the next expansion. Someone pointed out, and it's actually true, that at this moment in time, this, last 6 months period before the release of the following expansion, which is usually the more boring, the more dead in content, right, as you wait for the next expansion, this will actually be the chunk of time with the most amount of content ever released in a WoW expansion. If you look at the past 6 months, if you assume the expansion coming out in August/September, but basically from this February more or less onwards, in these 6 months, between the already retail existing patches, plus Plunderstorm, plus 10.2.7, plus the WoW remix of Mists of Pandaria, and then you compare it with the last 6 months of Shadowlands, even the last 6 months of BFA and Legion and Warlords and Mists and Cataclysm, it is going to be the expansion with the most content. So that's an interesting thought, at least, for the ending on this video about the content being released, in what was supposed to be a very, kind of dead part of the expansion. But for today, at this point, we have to basically just wait a couple of days or so to get even more news about this upcoming 10.2.7 patch. So for today, we are now leaving each other on this Friday. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of the Patreon supporters, as well as everyone else who is supporting completely for free. For example, with the acts of liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these superfluous things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I have to, as usual, get ready for the nuclear bomb that is going to land behind me in 3, 2, 1.